It started with the sound of metal snapping. I'd been inside my workshop, sanding a cedar beam for the cabin extension, when the noise hit like a gunshot. My first thought was that one of my cattle panels had come loose in the wind. My second thought, unfortunately, turned out to be right. The HOA had finally lost its mind. When I stepped outside, I saw 3 men in orange safety vests and a woman in a cream blazer pointing toward the road fence that marked the edge of my property. The fence post lay broken on the gravel like a snapped tooth, wire twisted, and a steel cutting saw humming beside it. The woman in the blazer was Claire Whitmore, president of the Lakeside Ridge HOA, self-appointed guardian of community standards, and a walking embodiment of smug entitlement. She noticed me, lifted her sunglasses and shouted, "Oh, there you are. We're just improving community access. You'll thank us later." I set the sander down and walked toward her, keeping my voice calm. "You're cutting my fence. That's not community access. That's private property." She gave a little laugh that made the men behind her hesitate. "Technically, this road services the HOA. Our bylaws state that members can't obstruct access to common areas." "Technically," I replied, "this road was here 30 years before your HOA. And it's deeded to my land, not yours." Her smile faltered for half a second before reforming. "We'll sort that out later. For now, we're arranging a guided community tour. New buyers are visiting this afternoon, and they need to see the full lakeside route." "So you're trespassing because you want to impress some buyers?" "You're being uncooperative, Mark," she said, voice tightening. "We're trying to increase property values. That benefits everyone." I could have lost it right there, but I didn't. Instead, I took a photo of the saw, the men, and the broken fence post. "You just made a very expensive mistake." She tilted her head, faux pity all over her face. "Don't be dramatic. We'll fix it when we're done." That was the first crack in the dam. By evening, they'd driven a small convoy of SUVs through the cut fence, tires churning up my freshly graded shoulder. Mud splattered my mailbox, and one of the HOA's banners flapped crookedly from a metal stake they jammed into my ditch like a flag of conquest. When I texted Claire the photo, her reply came instantly. "Temporary inconvenience. The board will handle repairs." I sent back one sentence. "The sheriff will handle this." She didn't reply. The next morning, Deputy Harris showed up, took one look at the ruts, and sighed. "You've had trouble with these people before?" "Twice," I said. "Last year they tried to fine me for my livestock gate being unsightly. Then they claimed my pond was a community feature." He shook his head. "I'll file the report. You might want to mark the boundaries again." I was thinking of something stronger than paint this time. By noon, word spread that the HOA planned a community lakeside tour that weekend. Their flyer showed a looping route that magically crossed straight through my acreage, complete with a rest stop labeled Scenic Overlook. I hadn't agreed to any of it. Claire's name was printed at the bottom, of course, next to a clipart Sunburst logo and the tagline, "Together We Thrive." That night I drafted a calm but surgical letter citing the property deed, survey maps, and local trespass statute. I printed 20 copies and hand-delivered one to each board member's mailbox. Claire got hers taped to her freshly waxed Lexus windshield. The next morning, I found my letter ripped in half and stuffed into my own mailbox with the words, "Community Spirit?" scribbled across it in blue marker. That was when I decided to stop reacting and start preparing. The road past my fence dipped toward a marshy patch before curving back to the main trail. Every spring, runoff turned that area into thick clay soup. I'd been planning to reinforce it with gravel, but suddenly, I saw an opportunity in the timing. I spent Friday digging a small trench along the edge where the HOA's SUVs were sure to drive, channeling water from the pond overflow straight across their intended path. Then I positioned a few wide boards over the ditch to make it look deceptively solid. From a distance, it appeared like a freshly dried patch. From up close, it was a mud trap disguised as progress. Saturday morning came bright and clear. Around 10, I heard the whine of engines and the shrill voice of Claire leading her tour. A line of shiny vehicles crawled down the road. A white Escalade with Realtor decals, 2 crossover SUVs, and a pickup with a HOA banner fluttering from its bed. Claire's Lexus led the parade, window down, her manicured hand waving like royalty. When she spotted me standing by my gate with a coffee mug, she called out, "See, Mark? Doesn't this look welcoming?" "Sure does," I said. "You might want to keep to the gravel." She smirked. "It's fine. We had the road inspected yesterday." I raised an eyebrow. "By whom?" "Your landscaper." But she was already rolling past, chatting animatedly to the buyers in the back seat about exclusive lake access and future community events. I followed slowly on foot as the convoy turned the bend toward the low stretch. The first 2 vehicles made it halfway before the sound hit, wet suction like a boot pulled from swamp mud. The Escalade's rear wheels spun helplessly, throwing sludge over its gleaming panels. The second SUV stopped short, tires sliding sideways. Claire's Lexus tried to reverse, but the rear end sank another inch with every rev. From my position at the fence line, it was like watching a slow-motion comedy. Claire got out, one heel immediately swallowed by the muck. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she shouted. "This is ridiculous. Someone go get gravel." One of the board members, Tom, a nervous guy who ran the HOA's beautification committee, stepped gingerly into the sludge and nearly lost his shoe. "It's really soft, Claire. We should wait for a tow." She turned on him. "A tow? During a showing? Absolutely not. Do you have any idea what kind of impression this makes?" I sipped my coffee and said, "Probably an accurate one." Her head snapped toward me. "Did you do this?" "Do what?" I asked innocently. "It's a wetland. Happens every year." Her face flushed crimson. "You sabotaged this road." "Technically," I said, echoing her favorite word, "you sabotaged it when you cut through my fence." The buyers stood awkwardly near their vehicles, trying to look anywhere but at her. One of them, a man in a polo shirt, whispered, "You said this was maintained access." "It will be," she barked. Once we handle this situation." By noon, 3 tow trucks and a county deputy had arrived. The drivers struggled for an hour to pull the vehicles free, each one sinking deeper whenever the tires tried to grip. Harris was the same deputy as before. When he saw me, he just shook his head with the faintest smirk. When Claire tried to file a complaint, Harris asked where the cut fence had come from. She dodged the question. Then he pulled up the photo I'd sent earlier. Her face drained of color. "This isn't over," she hissed as the tows finally dragged the last SUV onto solid ground. "I'm sure it isn't," I said. "But next time, maybe ask before hosting events on private property." That night, as the sun dipped over the pond, I stood by the repaired fence post I'd set earlier in the day. The road beyond was a patchwork of ruts, puddles, and crushed egos. Claire's banner lay half buried in mud, its slogan barely visible. I left it there as a reminder. What I didn't know then was that this was just the opening act. Claire wasn't done, and neither was I. Because by Monday morning, the HOA board had sent me a certified letter claiming unauthorized interference with community infrastructure. They'd accused me of endangering residents and demanded restitution for vehicle damages. That's when I decided, if they wanted a war, I'd fight it by their own rulebook, and I was going to make them drown in paperwork before they ever set foot past my fence again. I woke up to the sound of a certified letter thunking against the kitchen door like an accusation. The envelope was fat with printed indignation, itemized damage estimates, a demand for immediate reimbursement, and a threat about legal remedies. It felt almost quaint, like watching an amateur novelist threaten a query letter. I put the kettle on, poured coffee, and read the list. Gravel replacement, $2,000. Cosmetic cleaning of vehicles, $500 each. Emotional distress to community members, a round number slapped on in bold. I called Priya, my lawyer, who answered on the second ring and asked me to stop saying things like, "They'll drown in paperwork," because, she said, lawsuits prefer literal drowning metaphors in court. "Send me everything," she said. "Certified letters, photos, dates, times. Did you document the fence before they cut it?" I told her about the survey map and the photo I'd taken when they were mid-saw. "Good. Don't do anything else rash," she said, which was the sort of sentence people say when they want to turn fury into a file cabinet. I returned their letter with a packet stapled together like a rebuttal. Copy of my deed, county survey, a time-stamped photo of Claire's crew with the saw, and a one-paragraph explanation that read, in part, "The HOA's tour crossed private property without permission. Vehicles became mired in a known seasonal wetland. Any damages are a direct result of that trespass." The packet was clinical, almost polite. It was also the exact opposite of Claire's preferred language, which is always incandescent and performative. That afternoon, a grainy video surfaced in the neighborhood chat. Someone had filmed me walking the fence line and tossing something into the ditch. The caption read, "Mark sabotaging our community tour, caught on camera." The clip looped alongside acerbic comment. Neil from Lot 12 posted a photo of his kids splashing in a puddle under a meme that read, "Beware of Mark." The song of the small town, equal parts rumor, outrage, and literal potluck scheduling, started up again. I didn't reply in kind. I posted one calm, factual message on the same chat. "Evidence supports my position. I will not accept liability for trespass." Then I messaged the realtor whose buyers had been present that morning, attaching the county survey and a short note explaining the access history. He replied with 2 words, "Thank you, Mark." One ally. Small victories add up. Claire called a mandatory meeting at her manicured community center that smelled faintly of lemon and self-importance. She started with a PowerPoint full of glossy renderings of a new community trail, renderings that flattened my parcel into a green rectangle labeled Future Amenity. After her slideshow, she slid a document across the table and said the HOA had easement evidence. The document, like most of Claire's documents, was technically dense and morally lightweight. Lots of dotted lines, clauses full of, whereas, and subject to, but no clear signature indicating who had any authority to sign away other people's access. When I asked who had signed for this access, the room went quiet. Claire said, "We're not here to relitigate the past, Mark. We're here to move forward." Moving forward, in her dialect, is usually a euphemism for pushing boundaries until someone pushes back. They filed for an expedited injunction to secure temporary access during their formal easement acquisition. The judge granted a temporary order, predictably cautious, favoring an argument about community interest, so a sheriff's deputy left a polite notice on my door explaining that law enforcement could be called to enforce the injunction if necessary. Priya told me not to panic and to lean into procedure. "File everything," she said. "Demand their survey, their minutes, their consultant reports. Discovery will make them show their hand." So I filed motions, demanded documents, and had a local engineer flag my property lines with GPS markers. I posted the coordinates publicly. Facts, in plain text, are difficult for performative narratives to contradict. Claire's PR machine pivoted. The neighborhood chat filled with cropped photos of me walking the fence at dawn with a hood up, context omitted, intent assumed. Someone keyed my mailbox with bright yellow paint and stapled the HOA newsletter to my gate like a gaudy badge of honor. A petition circulated asking members to support responsible access. In the middle of the noise, an old neighbor I'd helped a few summers back dropped over with coffee and a bag of seed. "They're panicking," she said, hands on her hips. "Keep your head down and your receipts ready." I took the coffee. Small human gestures matter as much as sworn affidavits. At the hearing, Claire's lawyer presented the HOA's commissioned survey and a consultant who described vague community benefits that were, by definition, impossible to quantify. I rose, handed the judge my packet, deed, county survey, time-stamped photographs, the email where Claire herself had acknowledged the boundary during an irrigation negotiation, and a sworn affidavit from my engineer, and said, plainly, the HOA trespassed first. An injunction cannot be used as a backdoor to seize private property. The judge listened, nodded, and ordered a temporary stay on the injunction until both parties produced full surveys and the court could compare them. It was a partial win. My fence stood, but the dispute had migrated to depositions and subpoenas, and I knew Claire would lean into the slow attrition of legal theater. Discovery, as Priya promised, was a slow sledgehammer. I requested board minutes, internal emails, and consultant invoices. The HOA replied with boilerplate and delay at first, then, predictably, with sloppy candor under pressure. In a thread of internal emails I found a line where Claire suggested softening Mark's position before the judge and discussed hiring a consultant to document obstructions. Her carefully curated image of community stewardship began to look, on the printed page, like a strategy memo. I filed the excerpt with the county recorder. Printed records have a stubborn way of reshaping public narrative. The irony of Claire's escalation produced an unexpected opening. The buyers who had been on that ill-fated tour told their realtor they loved the land but were wary of the drama. They asked if I'd consider selling. Claire's stunt, intended to goose buyer interest, had generated genuine offers. I thought about the math, the inevitability of escalation, and the long-term cost of being a battlefield. I declined to sell, but I used the buyers as tactical leverage. I offered a mediated walkthrough for potential purchasers if the HOA agreed to put road improvement funds into neutral escrow and to maintain a transparent ledger for upkeep. Claire balked. Control is addictive, escrow is not. She responded with staged community cleanups, volunteers in matching shirts posing with rakes for photos, while the GPS flags my engineer had set still marked the true boundary. She leaned on optics, I leaned on record. A local columnist sniffed around, drawn to the archetypal conflict. Entitled Board versus a homeowner who refused to blink. His column asked whether an HOA could, in good faith, redraw community maps without formal vote. That question spread a little chill through the membership. Once the money and governance questions surface, many people who prefer tidy lawns to inquisition start to ask for audit. Tom, a board member who'd been enthusiastic at first, quietly reached out one afternoon. He admitted he'd been swept up, confused by the legal exposure. I like improvements, he said over coffee, but not at the cost of lawsuits. We talked about transparency. Recorded votes, clear minutes, and formal easement negotiations. He left the conversation quieter than he had entered. Small shifts like that matter. Governance is often less about absolutes and more about who decides the definitions. Autumn started to bite at the grass. The mud dried into ridges where tires had churned. Depositions and subpoenas stacked up. The HOA's legal fund ballooned. Claire's glossy banners and performative banners began to feel like relics of a campaign that had outlived its cunning. People grew tired of shouting. Meetings thinned. The community started to ask whether the HOA's actions were representative or unilateral. The narrative was changing from a single dramatic incident to a question of how the neighborhood wanted to be governed. I kept meticulous records. Emails, photos, affidavit. Priya smiled every time I handed her another folder. Discovery forced the HOA into predictable errors of omission and, eventually, admission. The flags by the fence, bright tape tied to stakes, remained. They flapped in the wind like small proofs. The flags proved a point. Boundaries are more than paper. Their history, legal right, and a modest, stubborn defense against people who assume entitlement trumps respect and lazy, short-sighted governance. By the time the frost settled over the lake, the HOA had turned the dispute into their personal winter project. The newsletters got thicker, the rhetoric sharper. Every week, Claire's emails grew more performative. Sentences like, "Our commitment to shared access remains unwavering," paired with aerial photos cropped to exclude my property entirely. It was politics in miniature, and she was campaigning for divine right over gravel. Meanwhile, I kept doing what she couldn't, documenting quietly. Every meeting, every comment, every attempt to rewrite the boundary went into a binder thicker than a college textbook. Priya called it the Bible of self-defense. It had dates, maps, correspondence, even screenshots of deleted posts. I wasn't playing for vindication anymore. I was building a record to outlast theatrics. Then came the rain. A week-long storm that turned everything back to sludge. The same patch of road the HOA wanted to claim turned into a bog again, swallowing the tire ruts from the last debacle. And that's when Claire made her next move, a press stunt. I first heard about it from Tom, the board member who'd gone half rogue. He stopped by with a folder tucked under his arm, face drawn tight with regret. "She's planning another tour," he said. "But this time she's inviting the press. Some local lifestyle magazine about community living." "You're kidding." "I wish I were. They're doing a photo feature on the connected neighborhood by the lake. She's having the road graded tomorrow morning." I set down my hammer. "Graded? By who?" "Some contractor out of county. No permits filed." He hesitated. "I'm not supposed to tell you this. But they're coming early." That night, I stayed up reviewing the easement injunction and my survey coordinate. The law was on my side, but law moved slow. Claire moved fast, like someone who'd never learned to fear consequences. At dawn, I heard the grind of diesel. A yellow grader rolled up, headlights glaring through mist. The driver hopped down, wiping rain from his jacket. "Morning," he said. "HOA hired us to smooth the road. Got the coordinates." "You're on private property," I said. "I own this road." He frowned, pulling out a printed email. "Ma'am said this was community access. Claire Whitmore, right?" I nodded toward the fence line. "See those stakes with the red flags? That's the legal boundary. If you cross it, I'll have to call the sheriff." Again. The man hesitated, studying the mud, then sighed. "I don't want trouble." He packed up, turned his grader around, and left. 10 minutes later, Claire's white Lexus appeared, tires splashing through puddles. She got out, umbrella in hand, wearing a smile that belonged on a stage, not a driveway. "Mark," she said sweetly, "you just cost us a community improvement. Why do you insist on being so obstinate?" "Because this is my property," I said. "You can't keep pretending it's not." She gave that practiced laugh again. "We'll see what the community thinks about that." Then she turned, heels clicking on wet gravel, and drove off. That same evening, the HOA Facebook page posted a photo of her standing by the muddy road, captioned, "Some residents oppose community development, but Lakeside Ridge will move forward together." Comments poured in, half supportive, half skeptical. I noticed Tom defending me subtly, pointing out that permits matter. It wasn't much, but it was public dissent, and that mattered more than any sheriff's visit. The next day, 2 journalists showed up at my gate, local magazine crew, camera and notebook ready. The taller one introduced himself as Nate. "We're covering the Lakeside Ridge Revitalization Project," he said. "Mind if we take a few photos from here?" "Go ahead," I said. "But if you want the real story, take this." I handed him a copy of the county deed and a printout of the injunction. "You'll notice there's nothing about community access anywhere on it." They exchanged a glance. "So the HOA's claiming land they don't own?" "I'm not claiming anything," I said. "I'm just the guy fixing the fence they keep cutting." A week later, the article hit online. Title: "When Boundaries Blur, a Lakeside Community Divided." The photo that led it wasn't Claire's manicured smile. It was a wide shot of my muddy road, the broken fence post visible in the corner. The caption read, "Property disputes threaten unity at Lakeside Ridge." Claire must have seen it within minutes. By that evening, she'd posted a 3-paragraph response about misunderstood intentions and neighborly collaboration. But the tone had changed. She was defensive, cornered by her own narrative. That's when I got the call from the county engineer. Mr. Dawson? We reviewed that HOA road grading request. You were right, they filed without landowner consent. We'll be issuing a stop work order and fines. It felt like sunlight after a long winter. I printed the notice and taped it to my repaired fence post. The next day, Claire's Lexus rolled by again, slower this time. She stared at the notice without getting out. The confidence that used to radiate from her posture had been replaced by something colder: calculation. That night she called. I want to resolve this, she said. I bet you do. Let's be adults, she continued. The board is willing to consider compensating you for part of the road if you grant access. Part of the road? Well, she hesitated, we were thinking a shared use agreement. You'd retain ownership but allow occasional community events. Like another mud parade? Her voice hardened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm not making anything, I said. I'm just refusing to give you what you already took. She hung up. The next morning, someone dumped a load of gravel just outside my fence. 20 tons of crushed limestone meant to improve the disputed road. No trucks had come down, no paperwork filed. Just a pile, sitting there like a dare. I called Deputy Harris. Looks like the HOA's doing late-night landscaping again. He arrived 20 minutes later, flashlight scanning the scene. They really don't know when to quit, he said. You want me to file another report? Please do, I said. And tag the county roads department. That gravel's blocking runoff. It'll flood the ditch if it rains again. He nodded, taking photos. You ever think about selling? Every day, I said, right up until someone tries to steal what I built. A week passed. Rain came, just as predicted. The pile washed halfway into the ditch, blocking drainage and turning the entire shoulder into a shallow pool. The HOA blamed me, of course, claimed I'd failed to maintain the culvert. But this time, the county inspector already had the photos. When his report came out, it stated clearly, unauthorized materials placed by HOA caused obstruction and flooding. The fine was small but symbolic. For the first time, official paper had the words HOA at fault in print. Claire didn't take it gracefully. She called another emergency board meeting, which Tom secretly recorded and later leaked to Priya. In it, Claire could be heard snapping, I don't care if it's his land. We'll make it community property by precedent if we have to. That recording became Exhibit A in our next filing. By now, word had spread beyond our little lake. Other HOAs in nearby towns had heard about the fiasco, half sympathetic, half gleeful. One county supervisor called it a perfect example of HOA overreach. It was exactly the kind of phrase Claire feared. Then came the moment that turned the whole thing irreversible. During one of their unauthorized cleanup days, the HOA hired volunteers to clear the scenic access path. One of them accidentally clipped the casing around a water line, an irrigation pipe that fed my lower field. Water burst upward like a geyser, soaking everyone within 20 feet. The volunteers screamed, and Claire, in a white jacket, slipped backward into the mud she'd tried so hard to control. The photos hit social media within hours. I didn't even post them. Someone else did. The caption read, HOA President leads cleanup, ends up in the muck. It went viral in the local group within minutes. By Monday, her tone changed again. Another letter arrived, short, cautious, almost apologetic. The board would suspend all development activities pending legal resolution. Translation, she was retreating, regrouping. Priya called me that night. You've cornered them. But don't get cocky. They'll look for another angle. I know, I said, looking at the fence through the rain. But it's funny. They wanted a community road so badly, they got one. Everyone's been driving by to see the crater where their plans sank. Good, she said. Keep everything documented. The storm's not over yet. I looked out at the muddy path reflecting the gray sky, the broken gravel pile half submerged in puddles. It looked almost poetic, the perfect monument to arrogance and water pressure. I thought it might finally be ending. I was wrong. Claire's next move would make the fence-cutting look like a friendly handshake. When the summons came, it looked almost ceremonial. Heavy cream paper, embossed seal, a signature written with the kind of penmanship that only appears when someone believes they're making history. Claire had filed a civil complaint. The headline accusation: interference with community infrastructure and defamation of leadership. I laughed when I read it, then stopped laughing halfway through page 3. Buried beneath the hyperbole was something sharper. The HOA was petitioning to seize a prescriptive easement over my access road. If the court granted it, they could legally use my land as if it were shared property, forever. Priya didn't laugh at all. She's playing long-term now, she said. If she can prove consistent use over time or implied access, she can chip away at your control. They've used it exactly twice, I said. She'll argue intent, Priya replied. That it was always considered community access. We'll need to prove otherwise. Historic use, maintenance records, physical boundaries. So I went digging. Old county archives, faded maps, my father's handwritten notes from when he'd graded that same stretch with his own tractor in the 80s. Every piece of evidence mattered. The paper trail became a timeline, one that showed the road predated the HOA by 20 years. That road had led to the lake long before Claire's developers built their pastel houses and wrote their first bylaw. While we worked on the defense, the HOA waged a PR war. Claire posted a photo of herself standing in front of the same muddy road, holding a clipboard. The caption read, "Protecting community pathways for future generations." Beneath it, comments bloomed like weeds, some supportive, some mocking. One of them said, "Future generations will need boots." But she wasn't after popularity anymore. She was after legitimacy. She started calling county planners, hinting about potential shared maintenance grants if the road was recognized as public access. Bureaucrats love buzzwords. Community enhancement, connectivity, green development. Suddenly I was hearing from agencies I'd never contacted. Then came the drone. One morning I heard a faint buzzing over the lake. At first I thought it was kids again, but the thing hovered with too much precision, circling the road, snapping photos. When I walked outside, it drifted higher, clearly evading me. A minute later, a black SUV rolled by, windows tinted. I didn't need to see who was inside. Priya filed a privacy complaint. "We can use this," she said. "Shows pattern of harassment." But Claire was careful, always 2 steps ahead in optics, 2 steps behind in legality. The HOA's next newsletter called it a mapping survey for potential environmental restoration. I'd started to realize something. Claire wasn't just power-hungry. She was desperate. The HOA's finances were crumbling under legal bills and maintenance costs. She needed a victory, something to justify every dollar. If she couldn't control the lake, she'd settle for the road. The first court hearing was pure theater. Her lawyer, a slick man with cufflinks that probably cost more than my table saw, opened with a speech about shared community heritage and the spirit of neighborly cooperation. When my turn came, I said only this: "My father built that road with his hands. I maintain it with my own. That's not heritage you inherit by proximity." The judge listened neutral. He asked for documentation of maintenance history. Priya slid over a binder thick enough to hurt someone. Inside were receipts, photographs, and handwritten logs dating back 35 years. Claire's side submitted aerial photos from last year. By the end of the session, the judge ordered a site inspection. That changed everything. A week later, 2 county surveyors showed up with measuring equipment, boots sinking into the soft ground. Claire arrived in her Lexus, makeup immaculate, pretending the whole thing was a garden party. I stood by my gate with a thermos of coffee, letting the professionals do their job. One of the surveyors, a quiet man named Lewis, pointed to a concrete marker half buried near the ditch. "See this," he said. "That's a property boundary from the original plat. HOA stops there. Your land starts here. Claire leaned in, squinting as if disbelief could shift concrete. That can't be correct, she said. Our consultant's map. Ma'am, Lewis interrupted, this marker's from 1978. It's legally recorded. You can challenge it, but you'll need an older record than this. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked smaller for a second, like someone who'd glimpsed the edge of her empire. I thought maybe that would end it. But people like Claire don't stop when they lose ground, they reinvent the argument. Within days, she claimed the marker was misplaced during historic flooding and demanded an independent appraisal. That's when the real twist hit. Priya called one night with a tight voice. Mark, did you sign any maintenance agreement with the HOA back in 2015? Something about road repairs. No. Why? They just filed an addendum with the court claiming you agreed to shared maintenance. It's notarized, but the signature doesn't match yours exactly. Forgery. She sent me the scanned copy. It was my name, my old address, even my handwriting style, but I'd never seen that document. I stared at it for a long time, hands shaking not from fear but from disbelief. It was a crude imitation, the kind of thing someone thought would pass if no one looked too close. Priya said, we'll request a forensic handwriting analysis. If it's fake, this could flip everything. 2 weeks later, the analyst's report landed like a hammer. Significant inconsistencies with known samples. Probability of forgery, extremely high. Claire had overplayed her hand. The court scheduled an emergency hearing. Her lawyer looked visibly pale this time. Under questioning, the HOA secretary admitted she'd received the signed copy from the president's office and had no direct knowledge of who signed it. The judge's eyebrows rose higher with every answer. When the analysis report was read aloud, Claire's face didn't flinch, but her knuckles turned white. The judge ordered an investigation into potential document tampering. It was no longer a property dispute. It was fraud. That night, Tom called me from a blocked number. They're falling apart, he said quietly. Half the board wants her to resign before it gets criminal. She's refusing. Says she'll prove it was a clerical mix-up. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But empathy doesn't rebuild fences. The fallout came fast. The county froze all HOA development projects pending review. The HOA's insurance company pulled their legal coverage until internal governance matters were resolved. Homeowners started asking hard questions about dues and leadership. Transparency. And in a move no one saw coming, the vice president resigned publicly, citing ethical concerns. Claire responded with an emergency town hall. She stood on stage in the community center under flickering fluorescent lights, talking about unfounded accusations and a smear campaign. But halfway through her speech, someone in the audience shouted, "Show us the signature." Others joined in. It turned chaotic. Voices overlapping, questions flying, her polished tone cracking. Tom recorded the whole thing. That video made it online within hours. The next morning, local news ran a headline. HOA president under investigation for forged documents in property dispute. Claire went silent for a while after that. The once daily newsletters stopped. The Facebook posts vanished. For the first time since the fence was cut, the air felt still. Then, one rainy morning, a small note appeared taped to my gate. It was handwritten, neat, almost apologetic. "We've gone too far. Some of us never agreed with her. The board will vote next week. Please don't pursue charges beyond what's necessary." I kept the note. I didn't reply. When the vote happened, Claire was formally removed as president. But the damage was irreversible, financially, reputationally, emotionally. The HOA's legal debts were massive and their credibility gone. Priya called it poetic justice. "You don't need to bury people like that," she said. "They dig their own graves. You just hand them the shovel." But I wasn't celebrating. Something about the whole ordeal felt unfinished, like the storm before the silence. Because just when I thought the story had ended, with the board broken, the fraud exposed, and the road finally mine again. An unmarked white van showed up one night near the property line. Headlights off, engine running, and when I stepped out with a flashlight, the driver hit reverse and disappeared down the road. That's when I realized Claire wasn't gone. She'd lost the presidency, but not her obsession. And if I knew her at all, she was planning something even more desperate to reclaim her power. The white van returned 3 nights later. This time it parked just beyond the fence, engine idling, headlights off. I stood on my porch in the dark, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, watching through the rain as silhouettes moved inside. They stayed for 5 minutes, then left, leaving tire tracks across the wet shoulder. By morning, I found footprints near the ditch, fresh, small, deliberate, and the faint smell of diesel. Priya told me to install cameras. "You're not paranoid anymore," she said. "You're cautious. That's a survival trait." By the weekend, motion sensors lined the fence, discreet but active. I rerouted the feed through my phone. And sure enough, the next night, an alert woke me at 2 a.m., movement by the lower gate. The footage showed 2 figures, one holding a flashlight, another crouching by the fence post. They were cutting again, quick and efficient, wearing ponchos to hide their faces. When I zoomed in on the frame, I caught a glimpse of her posture. Claire. I knew the shape of that arrogance anywhere, the rigid shoulders, the practiced gestures. She wasn't even pretending anymore. I called Deputy Harris. He arrived within 15 minutes, siren off, headlights dimmed. We checked the site together. A new section of wire was severed, the post loosened. On the ground lay a bolt cutter, still wet from rain. Harris picked it up, sighed. "That's felony-level vandalism now," he said. "We'll dust it for prints." "You think she's behind it?" I asked. He gave me a look that said, "Do we really need to pretend otherwise? Let's just say I've been getting calls about strange activity from other residents too. Someone's been trying to dig through HOA files that were supposed to be sealed." By dawn, I'd welded a temporary steel bar across the gap. It wasn't pretty, but it was secure. The mud clung to my boots, the air smelled like ozone, and somewhere across the lake, thunder rolled low and long. Storm season had come early. 2 days later, I got a text from Tom. "Emergency, Claire's back. She called a special committee meeting." "She's not president anymore," I replied. "She's acting like she still is. Says she's got new evidence about the road." I drove to the community center out of morbid curiosity. The parking lot was half empty, puddles reflecting the flickering lights. Inside, Claire stood at the podium like a ghost resurrected, wearing a raincoat and that same clipped smile. The board members looked uneasy, papers in front of them, while a few residents lingered in the back, arms crossed. "I have discovered new documentation," she said, holding up a folder, proving historic access to the lakeside road. "This will finally end the dispute and restore community unity." I stepped forward. "That better not be another forged document, Claire." Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp but steady. "You're not supposed to be here, Mark. This is an internal meeting. Then stop talking about my land." She ignored me, flipping through the pages. "As you'll see, this letter, dated 1996, references the developer's intention to maintain public access for all future residents." Tom leaned forward. "Where did you get that?" Claire smiled. "Anonymous source." I walked closer, scanning the page. It looked aged, yellowed, folded. But there was one problem: printed email addresses in the letterhead. Email addresses. In 1996. "That's a fake," I said flatly. "At least use an era-appropriate forgery next time." Laughter rippled through the room. Claire's face tightened and she slammed the folder shut. "This is harassment. You've all let him poison you against me." Someone in the back muttered, "You did that yourself." She stormed out before anyone could say more, rain slapping the windows as the door slammed behind her. Tom sighed. "She's unraveling. But she's still dangerous." Dangerous was an understatement. That night, the storm hit full force, sheets of rain, lightning that lit up the lake like a strobe. Around midnight, the power flickered out. I went to the breaker panel in the workshop, only to find water dripping from the conduit box. I cut the main switch immediately. That's when I saw the smoke. A thin, ghostly wisp curling from near the fuel shed by the back fence. I sprinted through the downpour, heart hammering, and found the source. Someone had dumped oily rags near the generator. The smell was unmistakable. If lightning hadn't drenched the area moments earlier, it could have gone up like kindling. I grabbed the hose and soaked everything again, just to be sure. Then I checked the cameras. The feed had gone black around 11:47 p.m., right before the smoke appeared. Someone had cut the power line to the system. I sent the footage and photos straight to Priya and Harris. Harris called back immediately. "You need to get out of the house for a few hours," he said. "We'll send a deputy to patrol overnight." "I'm not leaving my property," I said. "That's what she wants." He sighed. "Then at least stay armed and keep your lights on." The storm worsened through the night. Trees bent under wind, waves slammed the shore, and thunder rolled endlessly. Around 3 a.m., there was a loud crack, like something heavy falling. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. One of the larger pines near the road had collapsed, blocking the entire lane. On the other side of it, I saw dim headlights flickering through the rain. A car, no, an SUV, stuck axle-deep in mud. Claire's Lexus. For a long second, I just stood there, rain soaking through my jacket, watching her spin the wheels uselessly. Then I walked forward slowly, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the downpour. When she saw me, she froze. Her window rolled down halfway. "Help me," she shouted over the rain. "The engine's flooding." I almost laughed at the irony. "You're trespassing again, Claire." "Mark, please," she shouted. "The water's rising." I glanced at the ditch. She was right. Runoff from the storm was turning it into a stream, pushing against her tires. If she stayed there, the car could actually tip. I sighed. "Turn off the engine." "What? Now?" She obeyed, panic flickering in her eyes. I grabbed a rope from my truck, waded through knee-deep water, and tied it around her bumper. "Put it in neutral." The rain made every movement heavier, but I managed to haul the vehicle out with the truck's winch. When it was finally on stable ground, Claire opened the door, trembling, mascara running down her cheek. "You could have let me drown," she said quietly. "I could have," I replied. "But I'm not you." She looked away, shivering. "You don't understand. They were going to remove me completely, from the board, from everything. I needed a win. Just one." "So you started a fire?" Her eyes widened. "What? No. I didn't. Someone cut my cameras. Someone left fuel rags by my shed." She shook her head frantically. "It wasn't me. I came to," she hesitated, voice breaking, "to get something from the files. Proof that the forgery wasn't mine." I stared at her, rain dripping from my hat. "You expect me to believe that?" "I swear it," she said. "Tom and the others. They were planning it from the start. They used me. I was stupid enough to sign whatever they gave me." It was the first time she'd sounded human. Desperate, defeated, drenched in regret. Harris's patrol car pulled up just then, lights flashing blue against the storm. He stepped out, hand resting on his sidearm, eyes narrowing. "Everything all right here?" I gestured toward Claire. "Found her stuck on my property. Says she's innocent." Harris raised an eyebrow. "That right?" She nodded weakly, tears cutting tracks down her face. "I just wanted to fix it." He exhaled. "All right, both of you, let's get inside before lightning fixes us instead." We sheltered in my workshop while the storm passed, the generator humming softly. Claire sat in silence, dripping on the concrete floor, staring at the old survey maps pinned to the wall. When dawn finally broke, Harris escorted her back to her car. She thanked me without meeting my eyes. "You should know," she said before leaving, "there's more going on than you think. Someone's been using my name for months." Then she drove off, leaving ruts in the softened ground. Priya called an hour later. Good news. The county just dismissed the HOA's entire petition. Fraud voided everything. And the bad news? I asked. There's an anonymous complaint about tampering with HOA funds. Looks like someone's trying to shift the blame. I looked out at the collapsed pine, the mud-streaked road, the lingering puddles that reflected a bruised dawn. Something told me the real storm hadn't ended, it had just changed form. Claire might have been dethroned, but someone else was still pulling strings behind the scenes. And judging by the new envelope on my porch, stamped with another HOA seal, the war over that road wasn't over, it had only changed commanders. The envelope sat on my porch like a snake in the sun, plain white, official seal, no return address. I didn't touch it for an hour. I just watched it through the window while finishing my coffee, half expecting it to move. When I finally opened it, the letter inside was short, typed in that bland HOA font I'd come to despise. Effective immediately, a new interim president has been appointed to oversee the transition of Lakeside Ridge governance. All property disputes remain under review. Signed, Thomas G. Caldwell. Tom. For a long time, I just stared at the name. The same Tom who'd warned me, who'd pretended to be a reluctant ally. The same Tom who had quietly recorded meetings and handed me helpful, inside information. It was a move so subtle, so premeditated, it almost impressed me. He hadn't betrayed Claire out of guilt. He'd removed her because she was sloppy. I called Priya immediately. Tom's running the board now, I said. That makes sense, she replied. He was the vice president before she imploded. No, Priya, it fits too neatly. He's been playing both sides, feeding her ego, feeding me intel, and waiting until she self-destructed. She was quiet for a moment. You think he's the one behind the forgery? I think he's the one behind everything. That evening, I went to the community center. The storm had left the parking lot pitted with puddles and tree debris. Inside, Tom stood at the podium in a clean suit, smiling that politician's smile. The kind that stretches too far but never reaches the eyes. Mark, he said, spotting me. Glad you could make it. I was hoping we'd finally move past all that unpleasantness. Unpleasantness, I repeated. You mean fraud, arson, trespassing? He chuckled softly. Strong words for misunderstandings. There were new faces on the board now, neighbors who looked wary but curious, drawn by his charm. Tom spoke to them like a preacher, spinning a tale of renewal. This is a new chapter, he said. A chance to rebuild community trust, to correct mistakes made under previous leadership. I waited until he finished, then said, That's an elegant way to say cover up. The room went quiet. Tom's smile faltered, just slightly. No one's covering anything. We're cooperating fully with the county review. Funny, I said, because the same forgery that Claire got blamed for used your printer's metadata. He froze for a fraction of a second, small, but enough. Then the mask snapped back on. You're grasping, Mark. Maybe the stress has you seeing patterns that aren't there. Maybe. Or maybe you used her obsession as camouflage. Let her take the fall while you orchestrated the entire land grab. Tom tilted his head. That's quite a story. Yeah, I said. It'll sound great when the sheriff hears it. I walked out before he could reply. Outside, the air smelled like wet pine and gasoline. I noticed a pickup idling near the far end of the lot, its headlights off. Someone was watching. I couldn't see who, but the outline in the driver's seat looked familiar. That night, I rechecked my cameras. Still functional, still watching. The memory cards showed nothing unusual until 3:12 a.m. That's when a second vehicle pulled up to my lower fence. Same pickup. 2 figures got out. One of them held a shovel. I didn't call Harris this time. I wanted to see how far they'd go. By the time I reached the edge of the property, the rain had started again, soft but steady. I killed my flashlight and approached quietly. The figures were digging near the boundary post, prying something out of the ground. I stepped closer until the beam of their own light caught their faces. Tom and Claire. For a moment, time stopped. Claire looked pale, drawn, older somehow, while Tom worked feverishly, shoveling mud from around a metal lockbox. "What are you doing?" I shouted. They both froze. Claire spun toward me, eyes wide, hair plastered to her face. Tom cursed under his breath. "This isn't what it looks like." "It looks exactly like what it is," I said. "Breaking and entering." Again. Claire stepped forward, voice trembling. "Please, just listen. That box, Tom buried it. It's where he hid the original documents. The real ones. The ones that prove I didn't forge anything." Tom straightened, mud dripping from his gloves. "She's delusional." "Then why are you the one digging?" I asked. The rain intensified, pattering against the metal lid of the lockbox. Claire lunged toward it, but Tom grabbed her arm. "You're not taking that," he shouted. I started recording on my phone. "Go ahead, keep talking." Claire twisted free and yanked open the box. Inside, sealed in plastic, were folders, old HOA ledgers, financial statements, and a hard drive wrapped in duct tape. She held it up like a relic. "This is it. He used my signature to move HOA funds, thousands in consulting fees that never existed." Tom lunged, knocking it from her hands. The hard drive hit the mud and cracked. Claire screamed, grabbing at him. They slipped, fell, grappled in the rain like two ghosts fighting over a corpse. I pulled them apart, shouting for them to stop. Claire's knees were bleeding, Tom's face smeared with mud and fury. "You destroyed everything," she cried. Tom spat rainwater. "You were already destroyed." Then headlights appeared at the end of the road. Harris's cruiser, siren off but lights flashing faint blue in the storm. Someone had called it in, maybe a neighbor, maybe Priya, maybe fate itself. When Harris stepped out, the sight of the two of them covered in mud beside a half-dug hole said everything words couldn't. He walked over slowly, flashlight steady. "Anybody want to explain what in God's name this is?" Tom started to speak, but Claire cut him off. "He forged the documents," she said, voice breaking. "He used me as the signature scapegoat. It's all in there." Harris picked up the shattered drive and bagged it. "We'll see about that." He arrested both of them on the spot: trespassing, tampering, destruction of evidence. Tom protested until the cuffs clicked. Claire just looked at me, eyes hollow but oddly relieved. "Thank you," she said quietly as Harris led her away. When the cruisers left, silence filled the air. The rain slowed to a drizzle. I looked down at the ruined box, half submerged in mud, and thought about how much damage one strip of road had caused, how much ego, greed, and fear had been poured into it. The next few weeks were a blur of hearings, statements, and paperwork. The county forensic team recovered enough from the drive to confirm Claire's story. Tom had embezzled HOA funds for years, creating fake consulting contracts and routing the money through shell invoices. When Claire became inconvenient, he fabricated the road dispute to bury the paper trail under public chaos. In the end, the road had been his smokescreen. The county voided every HOA claim against me. The board was dissolved under state oversight. Residents were furious but oddly united in their outrage. They wanted peace, not control. A new committee formed, volunteer-based, without dues or Byzantine rules. They didn't even call it an HOA anymore. Just lakeside neighbors. Priya came by the day the final notice arrived. Case closed, property reaffirmed, damages compensated. "You won," she said simply. "Feels like surviving, not winning," I said. She smiled faintly. "Surviving's still victory when everyone else tried to drown you." That night, the lake was calm again. The fence stood repaired, stronger than ever, with a new gravel base that gleamed in the moonlight. I walked the road slowly, flashlight sweeping across the markers. Boundaries not just of land, but of patience, integrity, and sanity. Halfway down, I noticed something glittering in the mud, a small, rusted piece of metal. I picked it up. It was one of Claire's old HOA lapel pins, bent and dulled by rain. I pocketed it without really knowing why. Maybe as a reminder that people can lose themselves chasing control they never truly had. A week later, Harris stopped by for a final check. "County's filing charges against Tom," he said. "Looks like he'll do some time. Claire's cooperating, turning over everything she's got." "Good," I said. "Maybe she'll finally sleep." He looked around the property, hands in his jacket pocket. "You know, that road's gonna be famous after all this. Folks drive by just to see the spot." "Let them," I said. "Maybe they'll learn something about boundaries." He laughed. "Boundaries, huh? That's one word for it." When he left, I stood alone by the fence, listening to the frogs and the soft hum of the generator. The air smelled clean again, washed of diesel and deceit. For the first time in months, I felt no tension in my shoulders. The road belonged to me again. Not because I fought harder, but because I refused to surrender what was rightfully mine. Sometimes winning isn't about revenge. It's about endurance, outlasting the chaos until the truth has no choice but to surface. As I turned back toward the house, lightning flickered once more over the lake, distant but silent. A storm far away this time, heading somewhere else. And for the first time since that first fence post snapped, I didn't flinch.